Friends, welcome to our video where we investigate the nature of Platonic forms according to the latter Platonists, particularly Plotinus and Proclus, interformation and time. Our imaginative, or rather, as I would like to put it, our self-beholding fantasy, imaginative, interforming cognition, one unified world, is interconnected with form. Now, we want to start with these contemporary views on Plato's forms. We have on the left here an image that I got from Roger Penrose's wonderfully thorough and large work on reality. The worlds, he depicts here three worlds, the physical world, the mental world, and the world of mathematics, to which he adds Plato's truth, beauty, and morality, which is most notably absent in our world today. He says that mathematics lives in a separate world. And we will listen to what the good Professor Michael Levine, he's a biologist, a electrical biologist, he's a physicist, he's also an expert in algorithms and all kinds of wonderful things we have today. So he does research on bioelectrical fields, on how they guide the migration of organs in the body, and so on and so forth. Here is what he has to say about Platonic forms.
Not how most biologists think about things. I think that in the exact same way that mathematicians that are sympathetic to the Platonic worldview, this idea that there are, in fact, in some way, there is a separate world in which various rules of number theory and various facts of mathematics and various properties of computation and things like that, right? That there's a separate space where these things...
There is a separate space where these things live, says he. In our previous video on reflection, where we are discussing the three models of Proclus, of mirrors, the wax and stamp, and icons, we said this: but contrary to the mirror and wax, participative form pervades through the whole subject matter and operates internally. For nature fashions forms body inwardly and not externally, like art. This internal operation of form appears to be self-forming, a self-forming holographic, like instantaneous reflective information transfer, as a true interformation of image making. We will continue our discussion on the self-beholding, interforming fantasy of the Greeks. Now, I think there are internal worlds that we are unaware of. There is plenty of research in parapsychology and particularly connected with the work of Rupert Sheldrake on morphic fields that are guiding. That's quite a revolutionary concept, and it really is an advancement from pure matter theories, as I would like to put them. So there are worlds that are not ancient worlds that we very easily called primitive. But were they really primitive? Truly, or is this a straight deduction from our looking straight down the scope of the past without bringing into account interforming image worlds, such as, for instance, the hollow movement of David Bohm? So I think we must be careful with straight down the past scope of time, as we will see in what comes in this video, and why I say this. Now, we have a few questions that we would like to ask, like things like, for instance, what is eternity and what does infinite mean? Is it a what or a who? These are perplexing questions to which I don't think we have answers. They are mysterious in the world we have today, but it's not a bad thing to look at what the meaning is of some of these things. So a holographic cosmic movement holds of the interforming fantasy of the Platonists, holds the internal relation of interformation interconnection and participation through our own subtle bodies, subtle vehicles who have their seats in the world soul, who possess their the soul is the divine and the sacred within us. And now I have to admit that when I began to inquire into the Greek fantasy, I was well on my way already with my studies on Proclus, because these works, they came to me. And this idea of the fantasy is scattered through very ancient works like Iamblichus and Pythagoras, and the works of Homer. So it's quite a dig to, how shall we say it, bring it all together. But the thing is, to me, is that what struck me was the idea of the Divine Mother. I was struck by the fact that there is a contradiction, an opposite to the notions that some people hold, that the mother is a fallen deity. So I would like to say that we shouldn't confuse what I have to say in these works with the modern notions of Plato and the works of the postmodern neo-Gnostic philosophers. I've noticed that there are many of these, I'm not naming names, that translate and interpret Plato under their views, which I think distorts the ideas, and which kind of prompted me to do these 3 videos, 4 including Plotinus, on the nature of form in Plato. The absence of the ideas of wholeness, interconnection, world unity and the soul, in the embrace of materialism, pure matter, prima materia, and dualism speaks for itself. To continue our question, we might ask, for instance, what is the evidence that we have of Zeus? Does he not vanquish the Titans, those mystical, the mystical war of opposites within our psyche, and the wild horses of passion of our own forming fantasy? To which opposites the Lord of multitudes, riding on the wings of the subtle vehicle of a cherub, throws his thunder and shoots his arrows. His arrows are his love, his thunder. He throws these at the Titans, converting them to the unity of himself. Now in Psalm 18, I'm just going to read a couple of these verses from 11 to 14, I think, which says, he made darkness his covering. He made, he made darkness his covering, his canopy around him, the dark rain clouds of the sky. There is a striking image between what's in the computer on your screen and the words I'm reading for you. Out of the brightness of his presence, clouds advanced. We have seen in one of our previous videos that clouds are whirlpools, the cloud of Juno in Homer. With hailstones and bolts of lightning. The Lord thundered from heaven, the voice of the Most High resounded throughout the world. He shot his arrows and scattered the enemy. The valleys of the sea were exposed, and the foundations of the earth laid bare. At your rebuke, Lord, at the blast of breath from your nostrils, he reached down from on high and took a hold of me. He drew me out of deep waters. He rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foes who were too strong for me. They confronted me on the day of my disaster, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a spacious place, and he rescued me because he delighted in me. Friends, this was the Psalms of David in about 1010 BC. The evolutionist and materialist in contemporary discussions asks, was Jesus real? What about the resurrection? And Mother Mary and Joseph? Where's the evidence? Yet, remarkably, we are quick to point out that the parts we think are real, such as, for instance, the Romans destroyed the pagans in early times. We must just ask, as similarity to the Psalms of Plato, of King David. Were they not part of the mythopoeic unfolding? We have spectacular words these days for the unfolding of the mythical unfolding of the world. Let's not think, friends, that we are an unconnected aeonic evolution and alone in the world. The forming forces of light, projecting, emanating powers, opposing, unfolding the world. I found this image in my backyard one winter morning with the ice beautifully reflected and sitting around the tree branches, and it reminds me of the interconnects, the forming forces of light interconnects, form and operate with us, within us too. We said in our previous video, the subtle vitality of life eternally expresses itself through self-luminous form. And in our video on this video on reflection, we indicated an interforming, interdependent, united world, through which our self-beholding consciousness, imaginative, self-beholding fantasy, interforming is interconnected and interforms with a higher order, eternal, self-writing, self-forming, self-moving, divine, imaginative image formation of the Greek self-beholding fantasy. Vast, abundant reflections are infinite and unknown and possess an infinity of power, motion and activity or operation within us and throughout the whole supercosmic world. Here is a quote from Pierre Grimes that we'd like to bring into our presentation. In the 18th book of the Iliad, on the enlightenment of Achilles, the vision of Achilles says that he saw a flowing of divine luminosity comes from the self. In our icon, we have luminosity of self, time, and an icon is an example of the celestial sphere of Proclus. We concluded our previous video with, we may see how reflection, invariance of subtle form, ever-writing form, likeness, time, and instantaneous world formation is an important perspective to understand. Here is Proclus and Taylor on our imaginative self-beholding fantasy, reflective formation, and the at-once unfoldment of the world and time. Of specific interest to us in this representation is the idea of the sudden, the now of Aristotle, and the gap. Orpheus places time, which is aeon or eternity, near the one. Thomas Taylor defines the sudden as follows. The sudden imitates, according to the now, the at once collected, eternal generation of all things through the aptitude of the recipient. Edward Butler, in his The Way of the Gods, defines the now as follows. The time of myth is always now because of its vital connection with ritual, by means of which the gods, together with human operators, continue to enact the cosmos, to sustain it and to bring it forth in a process of ritual operators actually experience. In Pierre Grimes, in his Socrates and Jesus, a dialogue in heaven, which is an interesting read for those who might be interested in that, he says, Parmenides brought me to realize that in every instantaneous moment there is participation in and from that reality from which all change occurs. The moment is a gap that reflects the providential nature of the divine. The gap is beyond time and is continuously unfolding that which must be as it is, which is the point of this cesium image of a cesium clock that I found on the Institute of Science. Proclus says, it is requisite, therefore, in order to understand this reflected participation, to consider as the causes by which it is effected the efficient power of primary and divine forms, subtle vehicles with their seats in the world soul, and the desire and aptitude of the natures which thence derive their formation, such as the trees, the water, and everything around us. The prolific essence, ousia, therefore, of the creative intellect, Zeus, exert an efficacious energy, activity which the nature of sensibles receives. But in effecting this self-moved participation, it neither makes use of impulsions such as crashing things like billiard balls, for it is incorporeal, nor does it make use of indefinite impetus, the perpetual flowing motion, such as, for example, in our world we have the circles of flowing, perpetual circles of birth and death, for it is impassive, that is to say, unreceptive of sensible motion. Nor does the creative principle make use of any projectile force, that is to say, an externally displacing or progressing power, for it is perfect within itself. It talks about Zeus, but it was, that's to say, the power of Zeus, creative intelligence, operates, is present everywhere by its very essence. Hence, that which is generated is an image of its maker. Intellection, perception, making, thought, there concurring with essence. Intellection is the unity of beholding and formation. So that, according as he intellectually perceives, he fabricates, he makes images, and according to as he fabricates, he intellectually perceives. That is to say, image making and intelligence is united. Seeing and forming is an instantaneous unity. Elsewhere in our videos we said to see is to form. Also in our cognition, cog. Hence too, that which is generated is always generated by him, always, eternally. For in essential vitality of life, formations or causes, that which is generated is everywhere consubsistent, a connected unity with its maker. In consequence of this unity in things subsisting according to time, form in the sudden, the gap, supervenes its subject matter and changes whatever has been effected previous to its presence, removing the impediments to its reception. Here we have two definitions to indicate the meaning of these things. Supervene, to happen in the middle of a situation that already exists, such as the tree, the water, and change it. Synchronic, in Edward Butler, he uses the term synchronic, concerned with the events existing in a limited time period and ignoring historical antecedents. What connects the power of Zeus to the aptitude of recipients? We shall find that goodness itself is the cause of all union. Goodness itself, the good, the one, is the cause of all possible union, for participations proceed upward to mundane causes through a desire of the good. The soul has a natural inclination toward the good, and intelligent, subtle vehicles or forms of Zeus through goodness make their progressions into secondary natures, imitating the exhaustible fountain of all good, according to reflected, participating subtle bodies, subtle vehicles, vitality, and hierarchy, to which both Plotinus and Proclus hold their much misunderstood and ignored intellectual intuition, which is the ineffable simplicity of light, of the One, and the union of the all-luminosity of self, is the all-pervasive, intelligent, self-comprehending, and interforming place through the whole of which all life, power, and instantaneous formation emanates. Light is the place within the infinity of which all self-forming multitudes or reflections of imaginative power, force, motion, and activity is ever written. The true self-beholding light of the divine fantasy of Proclus and more ancient Pythagoras utilizes the elevation of the soul, the inner potential who reaches beyond ordinary mental states. Inner potential. An interforming practice of the self-beholding Greek fantasy, which is decidedly ancient, but not primitive, as we shall see, and which we have lost in the West, and which was the point of my reading King David's Psalm 18, and which is reflected in the miraculous theatrade of Pythagoras. This is the quadrivium of Pythagoras, of which some people are silent. This theatrade, with its more ancient roots, reflects the glittering web of subtle bodies and light, the inward-looking psychical media, through which the dialectic elevation of Parmenides with his four states of awareness happens. I'm just doing the main points here. There is a more in-depth treatment in video 9 together with Plutarch of this, so we are just doing the potentialities in this one. This theatrade reflects the primary forming media of the gods, according to abiding summit. So we see that which is the same as the One, like union, precedes the impartible. The impartible, which is all perfect, multitude, immovable, subtle, immaterial form, vitality, which precedes that which is self-motive, supercosmic, Zeus, self-motive, self-writing, subtle form, which precedes the mundane images, the mundane world of Bacchus or Dionysius, moved by another. Now, there are four affordances in this fourfold elevation of the soul of Parmenides. And we'll see that Parmenides and Pythagoras, Plato and Socrates all have these four, this theatrade in their discourses. There are four affordances to our soul. Affordances are affections, pathimata, to suffer, to undergo change, conversion, or passion. Since all things pass through these preceding unities that we've just mentioned, as through a divine entrance, a doorway in our previous videos, into the light of intellect and being. This doorway affords to our souls these potentialities. The first potentiality is the ability to look within inward turning, which is different from a reflecting mirror, or an internal reflexive conversion of our self-knowledge and self-awareness. The second potentiality is the recognition that the beauty of the world, corporeal images, possess higher causal principles. The third affordance is a true, well-exercised, inward-looking opinion about universals, those things that are self-evident, says Proclus in his commentaries on Euclid. The fourth potentiality or affordance, pure intellectual conception and interior unfoldments of intellect, higher psychological states of awareness. In this fourth state of self-awareness, internal projective intellectual unfoldment or emanation of our interforming imaginative cognition require no effort to bring conceptions forth. And this is what Proclus means with an internal intellectual, internal intuitive intellectual projection, emanation. Our corporeal perception, self-forming, self-beholding, imaginative cognition, and our fantasy within these higher states of awareness becomes, through practice, indistinguishable from higher intellect. But, says he, there is a fifth state of which Plato is silent. The stable, instantaneous, and circular flow of light, subtle life form, power, and activity is the very essence of the formation of the whole self-reflective cosmic subsistence, a vast living web of likeness or image, an abundance of living media of the soul. The interior interconnection, the inner passage of the human fantasy and of instantaneous world perception formation. That the ineffable light of true living being therefore unfolds itself at once, and that the reflexive, intelligent image making of a vast, delicate, and pure light web, which we portray in this image with its sparkles reflecting of the waves of the water, comprehending the reflexive, intelligent image making of a delicate and pure light web, comprehending the infinite reflected abundance of likeness of the One, multitudes, is necessary for the formation of the world, and this should be no secret, for we indicated in our new paradigm in video 11 the following, where our self-beholding fantasy, a microcosm, the most extreme external progression of all subtle vehicles or forms, is interconnected, nested within the immaterial creative intelligence of the all-superlative luminosity of living being. Whose superluminous, intelligent light sphere is touching and comprehending the whole world within itself. Light is the place of formation, through which our self-beholding consciousness, imaginative cognition, is interconnected and interforming with a higher order, eternal, self-writing, self-forming, moving, image-making power, whose abundant vivification of likeness are infinite, but mostly unknown and hidden from our self-perceiving world perspective. This resonating hologram-like projecting power, image-making, or imaginative cosmic forming language is at once and infinitely reflected within and comprehended within Zeus and Queen Hera, the monads of the supercosmic and mundane wholenesses. Divina imaginatio in infinite potentia brings forth fantasia, brings forth preceding form and creative intelligence at once through the gap in every moment. King Zeus and Queen Hera are the comprehending, unproceeding monads of the whole totality of the self-luminous, glittering cosmic web and its vast abundance of deific reflections. For Zeus, image maker of the world, is the source of separation and the cause of a vast abundance, an ever-weaving, glittering and vivified web of likeness and the light of intellectual sections, divisions, not dualism. An interwoven, glittering, at once weaving web of the reflections of multitudes of likeness of the One, a flowing of the luminosity of being, emanating from the luminosity of being. I think we should say something more about the goddess Rhea and glittering vivification of the world. For as the glittering, vivifying intelligence of Hera comprehend all perfect multitude, in conjunction with the preceding king, Saturn, who is pregnant, or Kronos, who is pregnant with the multitudes of subtle vehicles of light likeness, she brings forth from within herself, through her infinite, vivifying, projecting power, glittering sections, and evolves them, come on, through their end in Zeus. So Mother is the middle power unfolding from the summit to the end, who is glittering, vibrant, with a vast, intricate, ever-forming, interwoven web of intellectual sections or divisions, and interconnected. Let me just do this. An ever-weaving, interconnected, self-forming, reflecting web, at once woven by Proserpine, Minerva, and Kore, in conjunction with the leading, impartible monad Zeus. Proserpine, weaving in conjunction with the leaders of the universe, says Proclus, things first, middle, and last, and illuminates them within the glittering vivification of herself. In Plutarch and Orpheus, the multicolored, variegated, glittering robe of light and splendor. I try to convey that with this beautiful picture of from NASA. Friends, we see that in this theology of the Greek fantasy, time is interwoven with subtle forming vehicles. In other words, with a glittering, holographic, glittering web of the ancients. And it is interwoven with the spherical, supermassive circumvolutions of the world, the circles of time of the zodiac, Jovian, Saturnian, and time appear to me to be a continuous unity with a vast infinity of a self-luminous, glittering, ever writing, weaving cosmic web. Nothing static here, immaterial, who reflects the likeness of the luminosity of the union of true living being and the one everywhere, and who unfolds the world at once. Orpheus says deity places signature throughout the world. Do we not now see a most remarkable similarity with Indra's net of the Vedanta and his multitudes of likenesses, and the glittering light web of Proclus and Plotinus, and more ancient Homer with Zeus in this beautiful picture of the nebula of the James Webb that I found on the NASA website. Now, this could be a fast-moving conclusion, and we must investigate and to discriminate the facts from fiction. It looks to me there is this similarity. This internal operation of subtle self-forming vehicles seated within the world soul, or perfect multitude of Proclus, holographic-like instantaneous reflective information transfer, a true interformation of image making and our own imaginative cognition, of which in video 5 we have some treatment of Christian of Lydia and his instantaneous, direct and accurate image formation, which is what this is about. What can we now say of our scientists, who each have their own worldview and who are searching for the discovery of the higher order notions who might possess the potential to drive the future? Friends, I cannot speak for our scientists, wonderful, learned men, each rightly holding their own world perspective and have done remarkable work. But we can wonder why this self-beholding, imaginative fantasy, interforming of the Greeks remained off the radar for so long, and why this is not part, shall we say, why this is not reckoned with in the discussion of biological life, the nature of the world of forms as it appeared to be, and its emanation from the union of the luminosity of being with the One. You are the judge of whether these perspectives that I have posed to you hold water across long-range time. Next video is Plotinus on the Greek fantasy, part 11c. Thank you for watching and subscribing. Please join us on X and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.